Hello, my name is Justin Howe, and today I am going to speak to you about an intervention program that I have developed for the Portland, Oregon metropolitan area, strengthening health and safety for cisgender male sex workers. The health and well-being of sex workers has been of interest to me over the past decade, centering around how the criminalization of sex work causes worse health outcomes. In theory, decriminalization would lead to better health outcomes, but that is outside of the scope of this program. Working within a criminalized system requires a specialized approach to allow for sex workers to feel safe from incarceration and harassment at the hands of law enforcement entities, as well as societal stigma when trying to access healthcare services. I chose to focus on cisgender men, as most of the literature and research I found focused on cis and transgender identified women. It is hoped that a successful program would allow for expansion of the program to all other genders in the future. In the scope of this program, sex work should be seen as any type of in-person contact where transactional sex takes place, an exchange of goods, money, or other services for sexual acts. Sex work is still overwhelmingly criminalized in the US, with notable exceptions being 10 out of the 17 counties in Nevada and partial decriminalization of sex work in the state of Maine. Criminalization introduces increased social stigma towards sex work because it's seen as a crime or it's immoral, police harassment, and restricted mobility, which has to do with how a sex worker may move through the world to access any kind of services, not just healthcare services. These criminalized environments reinforce secrecy and staying in the shadows, so to speak, discouraging many from seeking care, carrying condoms or other work supplies, and other harm reduction services and institutions. Conditions such as houselessness, policing practices, and substance use issues in the Portland, Oregon metro area exacerbate these problems. Discrimination in healthcare is also a problem, such as provider bias, such as victim blaming, assigning blame for illnesses, confidentiality breaches, and limited knowledge about sex work, which further erodes trust. Within our current system, it is recommended to move to a health inclusion framework which emphasizes integrated, low-barrier, trauma-informed care for populations experiencing multiple disadvantages. Moving forward, the program that I have designed will have the following goals. The overarching goal of the program will be increase and improve access to healthcare services for cisgender male sex workers in the Portland, Oregon metro area. Right now, this population may be discouraged from accessing these services due to fear of law enforcement involvement and harassment, social stigma, moral judgment, lack of sex work affirming care, and restricted work areas, in that sex work must be done to some degree in secret or at unfamiliar locations. Other factors that could influence this change: ongoing criminalization, which will require incremental policy change and is outside the scope of my program, recruitment of participants and peers, which, as an aside, recruitment will take place via online escorting services and then using snowball sampling techniques. Necessary transportation for some activities, possible childcare needs, safe and secure in-person meeting spaces, and healthcare organization and other partners and providers buying into program objectives and goals. Here is a graphical representation of my logic model flowchart. To the far left are the inputs, or some of the tangible needs that are required for the program to work, flowing to the far right showing short, medium, and long-term outcomes. Naturally, funding will be required for the program to be achievable. We will also require staff, such as clinicians, community health workers, and peer navigators to allow members of this population to take ownership of the program and contribute to its success. Workshop curricula developed by staff and peers. Of major importance to protect the safety and anonymity of the participants and staff, participants will be given basic and secure smartphone devices to use to keep in contact with staff and peers, as well as to use and access the secure telehealth platform to meet with clinicians and providers for healthcare services. As needed, structured in-person meetings may be incorporated as the program develops. As part of the intervention, mail-in STI testing supplies will be provided to all participants, with supplies and lab work being provided at no cost to participants. I'll talk about activities, outputs, and outcomes on the next slides. These are just a few of the activities that the program will provide to reach goals and objectives. Again, the goal of the program is to strengthen health and safety for cisgender male sex workers, and in order to do that, improved access to safe and secure healthcare services is paramount. In my program, it is very important to have peers from the population we are serving help to deliver the program. This helps give the program more credibility while also helping to build trust. In addition, training in the objectives and curriculum of the program for these peers will also be necessary. Aside from program training, all staff and peer navigators will undergo a rigorous course in trauma-informed care, ensuring that the impact of trauma is recognized, re-traumatization is avoided, and that physical and emotional safety is always prioritized. A major part of the program will rely on confidential telehealth clinics and STI self-testing with mail-in kits. The results will be a completely trauma-informed care training staff and peer cohort who are also keenly aware of program objectives. Consistent trauma-informed care service delivery, and a robust staff and peer-created education curriculum, with confidential access to healthcare providers via a telehealth platform, as well as convenient STI testing for all participants who would like to utilize it. Firstly, I want to address that the development of this program was done using a socio-ecological model and framework, enabling me to focus on the interconnected, individual, interpersonal, organizational, and structural constraints that prevent members of this population from accessing timely, affirming healthcare, which also informed the previous proposed activities and carry through to the above outcomes. These outcomes will be possible as they align with the ecological model that I have used, as well as operating with an inclusion health framework. The outcomes address the breaking down of barriers to access, as well as improving the health outcomes of the program participants. Having a low risk, low threshold access to healthcare services will improve healthcare service engagement and improve health behaviors. Given a successful program, the hope is to continue to recruit more participants to move through the program and eventually hand the program off to peer leadership, still staffed with community health workers and medical providers, of course, to encourage self-efficacy. The aim of improving health and safety manifests in decreased STI incidence and, again, healthcare service engagement. Participants aren't the only benefactors, however. This program will help produce a trauma-informed care healthcare workforce that is also keenly aware of the special needs of the sex worker population. In keeping with the Kellogg Foundation's guidance, I acknowledge several assumptions underlying my strategy. I assume that participants will be willing to engage with peers and community health workers, that partner organizations will implement trauma-informed practices consistently, and that telehealth platforms will remain safe and accessible. I also assume that increasing knowledge, trust, and self-efficacy will translate into behavior change, and that early positive encounters will reinforce continued engagement. Finally, I assume that evidence from broader sex work and inclusion health literature can be adapted meaningfully for cisgender male sex workers in Portland's unique context. Thank you for listening to my presentation today. I hope it's been helpful. Have a good day.